For more on why highly skilled professionals are exiting the UK, I'm joined by Garret Martin. Garret is a professorial lecturer at the School of International Service at American University. He's also an editor-at-large at the European Institute. Good to have you back.
Thank you, Rachelle. Pleasure to be here.
So start off by giving us some context into the share of EU citizens who are choosing to stay versus leave the UK.
I think that's been a hard question to answer definitively because there have been some issues with gathering statistics in the last year or so. Now, what we do know is actually far from a major Brexodus, which was a fear in 2016, actually that the number of EU citizens in the UK has slightly increased in the last 4 years. Not by a significant amount, but it has increased a little bit. So there hasn't been a massive Brexit, as I mentioned. But there have been cases, as you know, the segment mentioned, in certain sort of more highly skilled workers in particular, have chosen to go back at times.
So then, for those who decided to stay then, what are some examples of new challenges that are being faced by EU citizens post-Brexit?
Well, I think there's a multiple number of challenges. I think one, of course, there was during the whole never-ending Brexit saga, there was great uncertainty about what would happen and whether there would be an agreement ruling or preserving the rights of EU citizens who would be living in the UK for a long time. So I think that's one element here. Secondly, when you're making any major changes, any bureaucratic major changes, as we have with the EU settlement scheme in the UK, there are certain barriers for certain populations. You're not sure that every population is going to be able to be well informed, to understand the deadlines and so forth. So you have some of the EU citizens in the UK that have been vulnerable. And then you have had some bureaucratic problems in terms of, employers, the health services or others not necessarily recognizing or understanding the new status of EU citizens in the UK.
So then, given that big shift then, to what degree are we also seeing Britons leaving home to settle in other EU countries?
We have seen an increase. I mean, we have seen an increase of about some of the estimates suggest about 30% increase in the number of UK citizens leaving in the last 4 years as opposed to the numbers pre-Brexit. I think those who moved have done so for a variety of reasons. They've tended sometimes to move to countries that already received a number of expatriates in the past. You're thinking about Germany, you're thinking about Spain, of course, and you're thinking about France have been sort of big destinations. For some, I think it's because they were sort of disgusted by what happened with Brexit. For others, I think it's been because they have the opportunity and the means to do so.
So then what, if anything, could the British government have done to make it easier for workers to stay in the UK? And on the flip side, how motivated was the EU to help with that? Was there even an appetite?
Well, I think preserving at least the rights of EU citizens in the UK and vice versa was definitely one of the priorities. I mean, that was viewed as in the early stages of the Brexit negotiations that there wouldn't be any discussion of a trade deal, at least until that was settled. But there's still the question of implementation. I think you've got to remember that immigration was a very sensitive subject and one of the key drivers for those that supported Brexit and leave in the first place. So I think what we're seeing, and a lot of this will have long-term ramifications and long-term repercussions, is whether the new migration system, the point system that the UK government wants to implement, whether that will be sufficient to attract, as they wish, high-skilled workers and to lower the number of low-skilled workers. I think it's too early to tell whether that will actually work in practice, and a lot of it depends on the attractiveness of the UK, whether its economy is performing well or whether it manages the pandemic well.
And so to that point then, what role did the pandemic play in people's decision to stay or go at this point?
I think it absolutely played a role. I mean, it played a role in terms of people leaving the UK. It also played a role in people leaving, a city that I loved and spent a lot of time in London. There was certainly depopulation from London to a degree. I think you certainly had some non-UK citizens who decided to move either because they worked in those industries that were particularly hard hit by the pandemic, wholesale and retail, for instance, or because they felt that maybe their country there were less risks in terms of the level of the pandemic and community spread, also because of questions of cost. I mean, London in particular, that hosts a lot of foreign citizens, is a very expensive place to live. So that may have played a role in some of the movements that we've seen. One of the challenges is because of the international passenger surveys have been cancelled in the last year because of the pandemic. We don't have great data in the UK in terms of migratory flows in the last year.
So then when you add up sort of the whole left behind, when you have skilled workers leaving along with the money they would have spent in the UK, what is the projected cost to the UK economy in the long term, you think?
That's an excellent question, Rachelle. I wish I could answer that with great certainty. I think it's a little bit, again, as I said, early to tell, because there's also one other piece here to keep in mind. One really important element is that UK universities have been very good at attracting international students in the past. So far, the pandemic hasn't had a major impact yet, but I think that's going to be a key factor because number of people who choose then to stay in the UK are sometimes coming in as students and are enamored and then have the opportunity to stay on and to study. And this is a great influx not only in terms of money to UK universities, but also in terms of people who are highly skilled. So I think, it's a bit early to really give a definitive monetary value here on the cost.
All right, we'll definitely circle back to you later on. Thank you so much. Garret Martin there, professorial lecturer at the School of International Service at American University.